All right, the 20 best albums of February. And, it was a pretty good month. It was not a bad month for releases. I think that I definitely struggled through the last couple of weeks looking for something interesting to talk about. But ultimately, we got there thanks to death metal being a thing. Um, so, yeah, we'll just get right into it with the obvious. I think for me, the obvious pick of the month is Haxanu's Toten Pass. This is it really is a melodic black metal record at heart. It does aim for something more accessible, more direct, and very inspired from this artist, Alex Poole. And basically, we're just getting the best version of this band yet. Uh, Fantastic riffs, memorable songs, great art direction. This was just one of those records that just had everything I wanted from a second Haxanu record. So clear best of the month for me. Now, Othar's Anthronomicon was not far behind at number two. This is a very impressive avant-garde death metal record, and one that definitely touches upon black metal in a more serious way after several records where they were sort of toying with the ratio. I think this one gets the death metal to black metal ratio just right, and sort of infusing each one into the more abrupt feeling changes on this album. I think it is one of their more technical feats overall, one of their more memorable records overall, and I think this is the one where they're going to impress the most people with just the sheer performative value of it, beyond the continually emerging level of expression they're able to pack into these really detailed pieces. Uh, and I'll talk about the second record later, uh, because they did put out two this month that are very related. This is the one that really stuck with me. Wolves in Winter is a British doom metal band with some modern influences, and The Calling Quiet is their debut. It kind of comes without a lot of fanfare, and it's a shame I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it, because it is a very fine, a very catchy record that has, a lot of things that the modern but still old school conscious doom metal fan will be interested in. So, above all else, this just had some of the most memorable songs I heard this month, and yeah, especially fine vocal performance, meaningful lyrics, and a really great production value. I think that counted for a lot. So, definitely a big recommendation for me, and a solid 4 out of 20. So Theophanos' first step beyond his work in Serpent Column is a record that will remind you of Serpent Column in the best ways. It feels like a really potent, venomous, but maybe a little bit more accessible personal statement here that feels less mired in impressing others, and which I don't think was ever really the goal there, but you know what I mean. Like this is less for an audience and more just for the artist, and leans more into his interest in mathcore, metalcore, kind of that side of thing, while still keeping the crazed and just untouchable different style of avant-garde black metal that he's become known for. I think it's a pretty good solid achievement for a debut in a new project, and it pulls enough from the past where it feels cumulative, important, and engaging throughout. Hellripper has gone from kind of a standard speed, like blackened speed metal band that got a lot of hype for whatever reason, uh, to a group that has pretty exceptional for kind of a homemade, do-it-yourself sort of project. And this record takes both a deeper step into thrash metal in terms of really whipping at riffs in a really charismatic and aggressive way that's really effective, but it also touches upon a variety of influences which are both uh, atmospheric but also explore black metal a little bit more than he ever has before. It makes for a record that is a very a wide step apart from what he'd done in the past, which was very traditional. Thankfully, some of his original personality definitely sticks around if you look back to the 2020 album that preceded it. But this feels like an important step into just expanding his horizons, his palette, and keeping it thrash, keeping it all about great guitar solos, great riffs, and there's a passion behind it that I recognized pretty quickly. German duo Hexer have put out one of the more interesting sludge metal related records of the year in Abyssal. I think this is it comes from folks who are sort of involved in the live happenings of Imhatarikat and various other bands, and this is a record that is all about atmosphere, texture, and extreme metal influences, which makes it like repeatedly interesting. It sounds like nothing else that's out right now, and I think as a whole package, it's just kind of a an interesting thing that sludge metal just isn't doing very effectively otherwise. So definitely worth checking out. Datum is a dissonant black death metal band, which does something different with its rhythmic development over the course of this fairly short record. That it pulls from groove metal, technical death metal, a little bit of black metal, in a lot of ways that are subtle at first, but profound over several listens. And I think a lot of dissonant death metal really benefits from those layers and the persistent listener who's willing to engage it. So I think this is a really good start for the band. It is a very fine work, very strong production, and it comes with a lot of precedence for other bands they played in that had almost fully gotten there. And I think this is the closest that gets to a strong parody between the dissonant black and death metal influences that inform it. Otherwise, yeah, there's some catchy songs in here that are, and that's a rarity enough. Parastatario is a Japanese death metal band who are influenced by the late 80s, early 90s old school death metal canon, and you'll recognize their sound as very much in the realm of like early Pestilence and that sort of era of post Scream Bloody Gore death metal that was still conscious of thrash metal and still had a lot of energy in its attack, and the result is a riff record. It's a very strong record with great vocals, and I think there's programmed drums, so maybe that's a detractor for some, but it works here and for this style. So definitely check that one out. Ad Omega is a dissonant black metal band who aren't purely dissonant. They're actually a mix of triumphal and kind of the more modern take on underground black metal, where they flit between a variety of influences to make a a tormented, aggressive, and very dark record, which complements their previous record with a little bit better fidelity this time around, so that we can, just better read the guitar compositions and the sophisticated movement between modes that they do so well on these songs. A little bit of a cacophony, a very aggressive record, but still a lot of value in sitting with it and feeling out what it has to say. Memento Mori is the second full-length album from psychedelic doom metal band Hail the Void, and uh, they're no longer kind of the typical stoner doom metal band, even though you will hear a little bit of like the Wind Hand and Electric Wizard feeling to the sort of buzz of it all. But this record has a very fine, strong fidelity to it. It has a very expressive, very unique vocalist behind the narrative, and it reeks of this mood that I couldn't get enough of for several weeks throughout the month, and it stuck with me since. I think it's the type of record where the whole package appeals to me up front, but then it's really in the details and time with it where it really it grows on me in a more profound way. So if you're prone to enjoying that type of psychedelic doom metal, this is a good choice. A red, orange glow will take this away, and I'll see the mountains crumble once again. Body Farm is a Dutch death metal band who've been around for quite some time, and they definitely have developed their own style, which is still relatable to the more melodic side of Bolt Thrower and Dismember in a lot of ways. It is that classic old school death metal cranked up to like a stadium-sized sound and very strong production values. They're very much a a bigger sounding group, and this record continues to expand upon their melodic voice, which sometimes involves passages which I felt also relate to melodic black metal just slightly enough to where it maintained my interest. They pull in, they make death and roll work on this album, which is very impressive, and there's just enough catchy, memorable songs on here where the Ultimate Abomination stuck in mind and was worth coming back to. I was surprised. I've liked a few of the records in the past, but this one is pretty good. Indoctrination under duress, shredded memories declared. Yeah, so we get to Helionomicon not as the lesser twin from Anthronomicon, but lesser for my taste in terms of like what I'm interested in. As much as I like albums that have 20-minute songs on both sides that are long form developed and pretty interesting pieces that speak to both old school technical death metal and black metal and the way that those things marry in interesting ways. I feel like this was less of a statement. It was more of a loose, atmospheric feeling piece that didn't feel like a step beyond what Anthronomicon had done, but a relief from it. A relief from the tension of that they've created on past records. And as valuable as I found that, I kind of chose the anxious, aggressive monster of a record versus this slow, lumbering beast, essentially. They're both great, and I'll come back to this one as soon as I've worn a hole in Anthronomicon. So it's still worth. It might be your preference. I noticed a lot of people like it more. So well, see if it's your thing. Putrid is a Romania-based old school death metal band who they're mid-paced for sure. They're not necessarily a death doom metal band, but you'll still get that feeling of like early Finnish death metal and maybe like Desecracy a little bit in their slower, and eerie rhythms. There is a sort of a shambling zombie feeling to what they do on Repulsi Postmortem, and I think they've done a really good job of realizing the potential of their demos with this debut. It was a good time to make a debut, and they pulled it off. So, fun record to listen to. I love returning to the sound of it, and they could only get better from here, I think. Frozen Dawn is a melodic black metal band from Spain, and they've been around for quite some time. And they were originally leaning more towards sort of an Immortal-esque sound, something a little bit more classic, Norwegian black metal in a lot of ways. And eventually, the Swedish feeling affect, the melodic side of the band, beckoned to them through their material, and the decline of the enlightened gods is their best effort yet in that direction. It's been quite a long time between releases, and they returned with one that really counts. It's a very long record, a very involved record that is a little bit redundant in its voice, but is still a great full listen if you're a fan of the classic style of Scandinavian melodic black metal. Now, Divisor is a part of the old guard of Greek black metal, one of the earlier first generation bands who are still very much cognizant of first wave black metal and thrash metal and death metal. And you could see a lot of the things coming together on early releases, which were very ambitious in the mid to late 90s. Now, it's been quite some time, and they put out various records in different styles over time. Something that is sort of like akin to like a, a black metal version of Septic Flesh on one record, and something a bit more classic here and there. They've always had their own unique take on wherever the approach was between releases. Now, this one is a little bit more traditional. It's in the sense that it recalls the sort of stomping anthemic affect of Rotting Christ over the last 20 years, while also developing their own style of just riff and rhythm. So it definitely has kind of a jogging pace, a sort of fist-shaking anthemic quality to it, and it feels very much like a record that's rooted in classic heavy metal in a lot of ways, but still recalls a certain era of Greek black metal also, the melodic side of it. So definitely worth checking out. I didn't see enough people talking about it. It is very much like a song record, not a full listen record for me, but well worth checking out. Iron Curtain is a Spanish traditional heavy metal band who have now started, after several records and a lot of changes. The main guy has focused more on a grittier new wave of traditional heavy new wave of British heavy metal style, which the waves need to stop. There was one new wave. It was back. Yeah, okay, just different rant. But anyway, this new wave of British heavy metal influenced band are tuneful, aggressive, great guitarists, can pull off a tune like nobody else, and this was a great EP that married some older recordings with some newer ones that indicate the direction they're going in going forward, and I'm looking forward to that. Gauntlet Ring is a New York-based black metal band, and one that is most often compared to Judas Iscariot. And I think that makes sense. It is lo-fi in the same way, it is traditional in the same way, and it has some of the same melodic sensibilities. Now, I don't think that necessarily completely describes what this is, but It does a better job than comparing it to the Blazebirth Hall stuff, which is much more lo-fi, oh, and adventurous in different ways. You do get the sense of Slavic black metal being a major influence here, and this is a good example. I don't know that this is as effective as some of their previous albums. I think that, but it's still quite good.